This episode is sponsored by yet another company that I truly stand behind, and that is Levels. And Levels is going to be offering you, the Behind the Shield podcast audience, a discount that I will tell you about at the end of this introduction. Now, before I even dive into what Levels does, when I had a conversation with their CEO and founder, Josh Clemente, he underlined such an important topic. So many of us rely on visits to our physicians to tell us how we are doing, and that is so backward. I am an absolute believer in putting autonomy back into the hands of the individual so they can take care of their own health. Now, what Levels does is it gives us the metrics so we can see exactly how everything is internally. So they help people improve their health through continuous glucose monitoring, comprehensive lab tests, and metabolic coaching. Now, through their 3 levels that they offer, they have programs that focus on weight loss, heart health, and glucose stability. I've now been through this program twice, and I'll kind of illustrate what it will look like. So you make an initial consultation with your Levels coach. You wear a continuous blood sugar monitor for 1 month. You'll complete a lab panel, and I did it through Quest Diagnostics. A clinician with Levels will then analyze your results and give you an action plan. That's when you can then start hitting your own health goals and in real time track your own progress. And then depending on the level you subscribe to, there's also a second blood work so you can now see how you're doing 6 months later. Now, by combining AI data, AI-powered insights, and human coaching together, 80% of Levels members improve their biomarkers. Now, as I mentioned, Levels is offering you, the audience of the Behind the Shield podcast, $100 off your first order if you use the promo code SHIELD at levels.com. And if you're interested in getting Levels for your department, email Josh Clemente, the founder and CEO of Levels, at josh@levels.com. And if you want to hear the origin story and so much more about this incredible company, listen to my interview with CEO and founder Josh Clemente on episode 1159 of the Behind the Shield podcast. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show Army veteran, retired law enforcement officer, and CrossFit coach, Steve Gowin. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from Steve's journey into the military, his transition into the world of policing, SWAT, first responder fitness standards, CrossFit, coaching youth athletes, farming, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Steve Gowin. Enjoy. Well, Steve, I want to start by saying 2 things. Firstly, thank you to our mutual friends at The Collective for basically making this introduction when we were on the show together. And secondly, I want to thank you for taking the time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you. We love our Northern brothers.
Now, we were supposed to do it the other day, but you were threatened with storms. Did they end up being bad in the end?
Yeah. And we had a big thunderstorm last night too. So it's all cleared up now though. So we're good. We should be good.
Brilliant. Are you getting cooler weather, warmer weather? What's on the back end of this?
It kind of fluctuates now. It goes from 80s to cooler, goes back up to 80s. So a day of rain and thunderstorms, and it jumps back. It's kind of like doesn't really know what it wants to do, but it as long as it doesn't rain more than one day, I'm happy.
Yeah, same here in Florida. We got some cooler weather coming again after the rain. So very first question then, where on planet Earth are we finding you today?
We're in North Texas right now.
Well, I would love to start at the very beginning of your timeline. So tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
So I was born in Salinas, California. My dad was a Alameda County deputy sheriff. And then right after I was born, he had gotten a divorce and he had me and my brother. And he moved us down to Central Valley of California, Tulare. And he became a police officer there. And I was raised there in Tulare until I hit 18. And then I take that back. When I was 12, well, when I was 6, my dad remarried my mom, who I consider my mom. She is my mom, but it's the only thing I've ever known. And she had my sister when I was 12 years old. So I got a brother and a sister. And after 18, I joined the Army and went in as a 12 Bravo combat engineer Sapper. Got stationed in Hawaii for 3 years. Moved my way back to Fort Ord, California for a couple months, and then finished out my last 3 years in Fort Lewis, Washington. And we got out up in Washington, and then I kind of knew I wanted to be a cop. You know, my dad, growing up with it, my dad, I did ride-alongs with my dad and stuff. And then I just took some tests and a couple of different agencies, and I finally got hired by King County Sheriff's Office, which is the county around Seattle up in Washington. And I did 24 total years there with 19 of them on SWAT. I was a team leader on the SWAT team there.
Going all the way back to early life, when you reflect back now, what were the pros and what were the cons of being the son of a cop?
Number one pro, as I preach it still today, is confidence. My dad and my mom kind of equaled each other, and it was perfect for me. My dad didn't talk very much, but he was very confident in his ability, and he would, he kind of got me into that whole mindset stuff when I joined the Army. Not to break down mentally, because you can continue on with the body, right? And things are just a mental game. You got to fight through the mental game. But he didn't talk very much. So I grew up rodeoing and riding horses and stuff. And he would be out there watching me when I was breaking horses and stuff. But at night, my mom would talk to me. And I got way more stuff from my mom that my dad didn't tell me, right? And so my ability to communicate now came from my mom, but my foundation came from my dad. So they kind of equaled each other for me.
And what about cons, if any?
I don't know. Everything kind of seems to me, it just kind of works out. And unless it's glaring, I don't really mention it because it just doesn't have a big pull on my life. So I wouldn't say that my mom or my dad had a huge con in raising me where I have to give effort to that and say, oh, that pulled me back. Because nothing in my childhood pulled me back. I did dumb stuff and I got held accountable, and it's not their fault. It's my fault because I did it. But the one thing that they always offered, my mom did, is explanation. But my dad did too. It was just more deliberate and direct communication with my dad. But I've said this many times when I've talked to colleges, I've talked to high schools. I don't look back at my childhood and think, oh, this was detrimental to how I am now. I mean, I grew up without a mother from 0 to 6. It was just my dad raising us till he married my mom. But I don't use that as a thing where now I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink, so I'm not an alcoholic, I say, because I don't drink is what I'm saying. Is I don't use those benchmarks to say, oh, I do this because I didn't have a mom. You see what I'm saying? And so I never really played into the fact that a con pulled me down far enough to make me do something in my life. Now I know what's right. I raise a good family. My daughters are strong and confident, and kind of how I was raised.
It's interesting reflecting back because I had, quite a few things when I was younger as well. I was in a house fire when I was 4, almost died, like genuinely almost died. Parents had a absolutely horrendous divorce, nasty divorce. But when I look back and ask the question, well, why didn't I struggle like so many of our brothers and sisters do? I am no better a person, but ironically, I grew up on a farm. My dad was an equine veterinarian. So I grew up
Oh,
around
cool.
horses. I grew up around growing our own food, nature, getting dirty, shared suffering, all these things that we know are very beneficial. And, I feel like that was a big part of it. I think that, when you have those challenges, because I mean, it is a thing to a young
Yep.
mind, why wasn't I good enough for mum to stay around? Is a thing that you hear a lot with dad. But I truly believe that those become strength if you're given the ability to work through it. When you reflect back now, did that upbringing help you? I mean, it wouldn't have been obviously conscious at the time, but were there healing elements woven into your childhood like there were with mine that you think helped turn those into resilience rather than push them down and let them, come up later like a lot of our people do?
Yeah, obviously, because I think if you have issues going on in your lifetime, silence is when the devil starts to creep in the dark, because that's when bad thoughts become intrusive into your head and you start thinking stuff and you think you're alone. When you're active, the brain is focused on what activity you're doing and you don't find those dark spots. So I am an advocate of living life through action. And that's one of our things for our apparel brand and what we teach the girls and stuff. And so having horses and doing rodeos and riding bulls, I was constantly doing stuff, and so I think that just keeps the mind active. So when you go in at the end of the day, you're tired. So you eat and you go to bed. And we didn't have cell phones then, right? We had a small little black and white television in my room that you had to get out of bed to turn the channels, right? So we didn't get caught up too much into silence because we were always doing stuff. And if I wasn't doing stuff on my own, I had buddies. So I would team rope every Friday night, and every Wednesday night, sometimes with my dad, I would go out and we'd team pin with horses and cows and stuff. But we always had horses, and I rode every single day. I'd get home from high school and I would be out there riding our horses, and I had other clients that I would break horses for or condition with, and I was just staying pretty active.
Did you play other sports as well, or was that your main focus?
Yeah, I played baseball for probably about 8 years, from little tiny grades all the way up into maybe 15 years old. And then I played 1 year of freshman football in high school. But I was probably like 128 pounds. I was a skinny little dude. And I liked it, but I just kind of drifted away and got into rodeo, and I started focusing more on riding horses and team roping. And so I drifted to that, and it wasn't because of a team atmosphere or anything like that. It was just like, I kind of like what I did, but we lived it too. So we had horses, and we would always go up in the mountains and pack for during deer season, or we'd go up there and pack on horses and camp up there. I've been up in the Sierra Nevadas like a bunch growing up with my dad and his buddies and stuff.
You mentioned about going to the military. When you were in the high school age, were you already dreaming of that, or was there something else in your mind?
No, to be honest with you, that's where a direct communication came from my dad. And it was in my back room, and he was next to me on my bed. And I swore I wanted to be a PRCA card holding cowboy. I wanted to join the pro rodeo circuit. And he told me, he goes, it's a rough life and you got to be very, very good. And it costs money. And sometimes if you lose, you don't get paid. It's just a very rough life. And he goes, have you ever thought about the military? His brother, my uncle, made a career out of the Air Force. And my dad was kind of pushing the Air Force on me. And I didn't want anything to do with the military. And I was talking to one of my buddies that went into the Marine Corps. And my dad we were in the kitchen one day, and he was talking to me, and he said, well, have you thought about it? I was like, well, the Marine Corps. He's like, no. He goes, you don't want to be a grunt. Don't be a grunt. So he's thinking more technical, right? And have skills and stuff. And so, man, it came across where it literally was, I think I was dating or seeing a gal that was in the Army Reserve. And it was a very short stint that I knew this gal, but somehow she linked me up with an Army recruiter. And then I just listened, and then I just took the test. And they sat me down and said, okay, this is what you qualified for. And they showed me all these videos, and I saw a guy run up to a tree with a bunch of C4, and he blew the tree up, and they did some Bangalore torpedoes. I'm like, man, I want to do that. I didn't know anything besides that. And then I just, I don't even know how I said it to my mom and dad, but I just told them I was joining the Army. And to this day, best thing I ever did, to get out of a small town best thing I ever did. And my dad was right. And at the time, I didn't want to believe him. He was telling me, you got to get out of a small town. You got to go see the world. You got to experience it, but you can't sit here. You cannot stay here. And boy, was he right. But at 17, 18, you don't want to listen to that,
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You mentioned, where you were stationed. I know this was pre 9/11. So kind of what were the experiences over those few years?
While I was stationed overseas, in Hawaii and stuff.
Yeah, and domestically as well.
Peacetime, and the Desert Storm broke out when I was in Hawaii. And so in 91, and they recalled us for an emergency formation. And they didn't say anything other than they asked for volunteers. So we all volunteered, and then found out that they only took one warrant officer from our battalion. And they left us alone in Hawaii because we protected the Philippines. So none of us got deployed. And then went to a couple schools, and then Fort Ord, California was pretty short. My grandfather was in World War II, and that's where he went to basic at Fort Ord, which is next to Salinas, where I was born. So it's kind of cool. I was only there for a very short time. They merged a couple engineer battalions together, and then off we went up to Washington State, Fort Lewis.
Did you ever get to talk to your granddad about that?
Yeah, about
his service in general. The reason I ask, so often when you hear the stories of the homecoming of World War II, we kind of project this greatest generation in the world, onto them. And absolutely, as far as heroism and sacrifice and service, no one will question that. But there's almost this assumption as well, they came back and just rolled up their sleeves and everyone was fine. But you talk to a lot of these people. I've had a few World War II vets that I've actually interviewed, and then a lot of people, obviously, that's in their family. And you realize that like so many of us, they struggled immensely too, over the whole generation. And there were some that, just like we were talking about, that managed to still be okay when they transitioned, and there were a lot of them that didn't.
Yeah, I know my grandmother worked in a Jeep factory during World War II, and my grandfather never really spoke about the war or anything. And he went in as a cook. And it wasn't till he was not doing too well, my grandmother had already passed, that he started opening up to my dad. And he talked about killing an officer, a German officer, and he took his sword from him because they were able to bring back some memorabilia back then. And so my dad sent me his DD-214, and I looked it over, and my grandfather got 2 Bronze Stars. And so what I assumed would happen was he went in as a cook, but they needed forces on the line. So they said, hey, guess what? You're going to be attached to this infantry unit, and you're going to go fight here. And that's what happened with him. And so, but at the very end, he was starting to kind of get in dementia a little bit when he was talking to my dad. And he would talk about it, but he just, his whole life, even with my dad, he never really talked about it. But I don't think they had outlets, only from person to person when they would see people. A buddy of his, probably they talked about it, but they didn't talk about it with their family. They didn't have social media. They didn't have podcasts. They didn't have the technology we have now to reach out, and especially people like you that care for more people with mental health issues and stuff in the professions and jobs of military and law enforcement and firefighting that they go through. It gives people an outlet now to speak about it. Back then, the outlet was going to see Joe that lives down the road that was in the battalion next to you in Africa, and that's how they talked about it. But he never really spoke about it to my dad until close to being when he was dying. He talked about a couple things that happened.
Yeah, it is so sad because, I mean, you hear these stories of, what grandma or grandpa did back then if they were, able to open up, or like I said, through some of the ones I've had even on the show. And there's so many lessons. These are the voices we should be hearing. There's cautionary tales of this is what happens if. And I feel like they were exactly like, even when this was evolving and we were finally starting to create this environment where you could talk, there was still that, oh, but don't you guys talk because you're the greatest generation and you just came home and you're the toughest. And I wonder how many of those, obviously now at that point would have been very old veterans, really wanted to actually finally stand up and talk about it. But there was almost that stigma on that era where it made it even worse for them to talk, I think.
There may have been something like that. I agree with you on that. And I think that, if a majority of people aren't doing something and you step out and you do something against the majority of what, you're kind of offsetting yourself from, and it might be collectively not looked well upon. I don't know, but I can say that human nature is human nature. And I can almost guarantee you that you take a war vet here, the World War II guys are having the same feelings and stuff that these guys are having because of what you see, what you do, the duration in country. And I mean, I've often said firefighting and law enforcement, you compound that over 30 years, you see a lot of stuff.
Yep.
You see a lot of bad stuff and you see human nature at its worst. Now, I'm not comparing it to combat, but I'm saying the trauma that you take in and that you reserve back because you go to the next call and you forget about what you know what I mean? And so your outlet has to be at home. Then when you're at home and your outlet's there, if you don't have a support group, then it leads to divorce. And then it's separation between the kids and you. And so what I've always through my career have told people, stay active in something other than your primary job. So if you're a cop, and for my instance, I was SWAT, I liked doing those things, but they were not who I was. That was not my foundation. And so we raise beef cows, we have horses, we have property, my girls compete. So I'm coaching my girls. We're constantly doing something, and so some people have a hard time transitioning out. I had a great time transitioning out. I didn't have any issues at all. I actually loved it. You know what I mean? So
what was it that put law enforcement on the radar when you transitioned out?
I kind of already knew that I wanted to do it because of my dad. I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I just, my dad was my hero, still is my hero. And he was well respected. People liked him. I knew what people said, not in front of him, to me, and the friendships that he had and the leadership he had and how he could take control of situation. I mean, just all those little micro things that you pick up as a kid that you want to emulate as a young adult. When you're young at the time, you don't see it, but as you start to become your own and you start stepping into leadership roles, I mean, I've said for years that leaders are not born. There's a thing out there that say leaders are born. They are made, 100% they're made, but your foundation comes from somewhere where you were raised. And if not where you were raised, whoever mentored you as a young person, because some of those traits and values will never leave you,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your front door experience. So I want to dive into DTAC. I want to dive into, fitness standards and all things, but what was the standard when you first walked through the door in law enforcement?
The fitness standard was pretty plain. I mean, like the whole state had to do the same thing. It was like a mile run, 35 push-ups, 35 sit-ups, nothing crazy at all, and then once you got past that in my department, you never had to do a fitness standard ever again, which I disagreed with 100%. And so nothing there. And then our defensive tactics, you run into, so you take something, what you do in your job, the likelihood of you getting in a fight is probable. It just is, right? Some fight more than others. And so with that, should you know how to be confident in your skills to not even make it a fight? When you're confident in your ability, you can talk yourself out of a fight, right? And so I've always talked myself out. I think I'm in maybe five, 6 fights in 24 years, right? But it didn't matter what they called me. They called me short. They called me this. They called me that. That didn't bother me, and it didn't get my goat. So, but I knew how to fight too. And so what you see now is an explosion in like jujitsu and martial arts or MMA. And I will tell you firsthand, those are the guys that don't fight. They just don't. It's the weaker ones that don't know how to fight that they start to get a little heavy handed and they get the use of force complaints and stuff like that. Not all the time, but our defensive tactics was pretty good. I mean, in the academy, we had to do a fight for life where someone just beats you up. And you have to stay in there for like a couple minutes, than just getting hit, And I thought that was great because a lot of people feel what it's like to get hit. You know what I mean? And so, of course, all that's gone away now. Because again, what I'm trying to get to is when you start doing stuff like this, what happens? People get hurt. People get hurt in training. It takes you off the street. It lowers your numbers. And so, I've often said that we'll always foster the weak, but we'll condemn the strong. And it needs to be reversed, because confidence always comes from strength, never weakness. Bullying comes from weakness, right? Not strong people.
Speaking of strong, it's funny, when I look back, I had such low self-esteem because I probably was a lot stronger than I realized, being grown up on a farm, doing everything from mucking out stables to wrangling sheep to, all things when kids were watching TV and, not doing all that stuff. When you reflect back now, whether it was boot camp in the military or whether it was entering law enforcement, how much did that farm strength factor into, your athleticism?
How I was raised, again, built that foundation for me. Literally what the military did, it just reinforced of how my dad was. That's it. Like if my dad came home and there was a piece of clothing out of place out of my closet laying on my bed, it had to be removed and put where it needs to go. The Army is the same way. It's dress right dress. It's clean your stuff up, make everything secured. It just heightened everything how I was raised for me. And again, like I always knew that I wanted to be into law enforcement. So when I was in the Army in Hawaii, I was always confident, but I didn't know why I was confident until I learned how to fight. So I took martial arts in Waipahu, Hawaii, and I gained another level of confidence I didn't realize I had. Once I secured that I knew that I could fight, I got way more confident.
Which martial arts did you do?
I did Shotokan, Goju-Ryu karate, where there's a two primary, a little bit of judo, and then I did a couple of years of jiu-jitsu. And so I've been plagued with some injuries through the military and law enforcement. I've had 21 surgeries. So I've got titanium everywhere in my body, and I've torn a lot of my tendons, not from martial arts and not from working out, but just from job-related stuff. So I got to kind of take things a little bit easier now in life.
So I mentioned I grew up on a farm in England. It was quite a shock when I actually entered the fire service and started working in mostly, apart from the last department, I always worked in, the most struggling areas of the cities. So very, very different. The urban sprawl, the desperation, the crime, etc. What was your experience from your background versus working in the uniform now?
So how, like growing up on a little small ranch or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, had you been exposed to the areas that you were working in, was there a jarring element compared to the areas that you've grown up in, or was it similar to where you've grown up?
Oh, no. I grew up in the country and I worked in the inner cities. You know what I mean? So there was like polar opposite. But with confidence, you learn how to mold and you learn how to speak to people. And so I could roll into Seattle and I could talk to a 74 Hoover Crip, right? They understand the game. They do the crime. We chase them. We put them in jail. It's a weird mutual underlying respect there. But I don't try to bring the way I was raised up into their atmosphere. You know what I mean? So I say the one thing that farm kids grew up with and ranch kids that grew up with, where people talk about farm strength, I think it's more mental, because you don't get to leave until the task is done on a ranch or a farm. You can't just put some fence up halfway and call it a day and come in here and drink Coke and watch TV. You can't do that. And so I think that mental piece to that of how I was raised, it grew into my careers and stuff like that. But where I came from to where I was, polar opposites, but you learn how to communicate with people, And so the military throws you into a big old pool of different cultures, all living in the same barracks, So you got a kid from Kentucky that's a coal miner, and then you got a kid from Detroit that was in a gang that realized he was going to go to jail or go to the military. And then everyone just seems to get along because you have a common core objective that everyone's trying to strive for.
With that being such a thing, how do we get away from this deliberate pigeonholing and separation of people based on that very element? Because when I think about Americans, I think the military, the first responder professions are the perfect example. And even more so in the fire service, because I've pointed out, if we're in our full bunker gear on air in a burning building, the only prejudice that we have is that a good firefighter or a bad firefighter? You can tell from the fireground what they're doing. That is it. Doesn't matter who they sleep with, what they look like, where they pray. They're either good or they're bad. But this last year, especially, I feel like, well, that's unfair. Let's say the last 9 years, there has been a deliberate wedge to separate people, to label people, to set people against each other based on these, linear, single layer descriptions or groupings, if you like. How do we refine the very lessons that we've seen in the military, in the first responder professions, where, again, we work and risk our lives side by side with people from all backgrounds?
I think people get too tied up into being a me culture, and that's where that separation comes from. Like, I'm going to outdo you and say I got more trauma than you, or I've got worse hardships than you, so the limelight's on me, not you. You know what I mean? And so when I've gone and I talk to teams, now I still contract overseas. So I go to Africa and the Middle East quite a bit. And we build team dynamics wherever we go. And so when you talk to people, it's not just Americans that are tied into their phone on Instagram or TikTok. The entire continent of Africa is too. They all have little cell phones that they've gotten. The Middle East is the same way. And they learn through visual looking, and they think this is how things are applied until you actually talk to them, right? When you build team dynamics, I think what you're speaking about as far as like how to get people singular mindset on an objective, because I don't care who you're married to. We have a job to do over here, and that's to put this fire out. So you and I need to have shared skills, equal amount of skills to put that fire out, right? But we get so tied up into, because I think it's because I want to be on a pedestal just a little bit above you, so I'm going to make it about me. And human nature, most of the time, they lie. So if someone asks someone's their feelings or whatnot, sometimes they'll lie or they'll omit things from their story to make it more believable, and they won't give you the full truth until you start breaking things down. Like when you do an interrogation, criminals lie, and you have to get the truth. And so sometimes it could be done within 5 minutes, and sometimes it takes over an hour. But you can finally get the truth out of people. But initially they want to lie because they don't want to look either bad, they don't want to admit guilt, or they omit things from their story to make it more believable for their side. And so I think it's a human nature thing too, to be kind of like, hey, me. But what happens is with Instagram and TikTok and all this other stuff, it is compounded now by me. And I'm one step above. But if you go to a team right now, you might have one or two guys in there, and we kind of quash that on our team. Give me an example. We were out of the range. New guy comes out. He wasn't on the team yet, but he had some of those morale patches all over his vest. And it said shit magnet, secret squirrel. And I told him to take them off. And I said, we don't do that here. That's singling yourself out that you're a shit magnet. Now, how does that look like if one of the admins come out and they see a professional team, doing stuff, and they see that? And that's just my take, right? So we never wore stuff like that. And I just wanted to kind of separate the me to us. If we did something, it wasn't like our SWAT team. It was the sheriff's office. We're an arm of the sheriff's office, right? And so, but yeah, same thing with my family. It's not it's us. Your kids are born into their very first team, right? Mom and dad. There's a hierarchy, just like leaderships have. But everything they do reflects the name of our last name, and everything we do reflects their last name. So everyone does things as a team concept here.
When you reflect back, are some of the career calls that you had, the ones that really stick in your mind?
There's a bunch, and I've forgotten a bunch too, man. There was a mountain mission we did that was pretty known. I think Netflix is doing a thing on it now. A guy killed his wife and kid, went up in the mountains and hid, and he had built a bunker for 8 years, and we had to hike in and go get him. And he ended up killing himself, and we had to recover his body out of the bunker. But we were there a full day, went back that night, got some sleep, came back the morning, and then got him out of the bunker. That was a pretty good one because it tested our capabilities that we've built, which was good. We did a lot of helicopter. We had an aircraft. So we did some stuff out of the helicopter. We did a lot of explosive breaching. So we did an explosive breach on that one. But that one, and with the things with kids kind of hurt, they mess with me. And if I don't have to go into a scene and see a kid that's hurt, I just won't. There's enough people in there to do. If things are calmed down, there's absolutely nothing. I do not want to feed that into my brain. So I have to remember it later, because there's certain things, as you know, that just don't leave. A good buddy of mine that I graduated the academy with was shot and killed. And I was at home and I got the phone call, and I was kind of on our personal assistance team, where I would go in there and help assist other deputies with trauma and stuff. But I was also on the SWAT team. The dispatcher said, "Hey, we need you." And I said, "Is it going to be a SWAT call out? Because I'm going to go as SWAT." And she goes, "I don't know." And then she told me where he was shot. And I was just, to this day, I was like, he's not going to recover. And they're like, we don't know that. We don't know that. I stood in front of my dresser and I did not know what to put on. And my wife got out of bed and was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Steve's been shot." And so worst thing I ever did is I went to the hospital with him laying there with his wife and kid. And I just can't get that out of my head. Those, but everyone's got something that they've gone through in life. And so we did things for his kid throughout the years. He would come out to the SWAT team and we'd put a big thing on for him, and they did toy drives and money things for his kid. And it was great, but those are a couple things. Like one was I like testing capabilities, because you train so hard. You want to make sure that you know what you're doing and that your team can perform a certain capability. And the other ones, the traumatic ones, I try not to focus too much on, just because I don't want that space in my brain, There's more, but that's just one that come out of my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just hit on a very important point, though. And I literally got to be on the positive receiving end of this very early in my career, Anaheim. We had a really horrible single vehicle accident. The little 3-year-old in the back was decapitated. The boyfriend in the front was killed on impact as well. And the mother had survived. And when we got there, the engine had already thrown a blanket over the body in the back. And so we kind of, there was nothing to do. The one woman was transported, and then the other two were deceased. So I think we removed one. I can't remember if we got the boyfriend out or not, but the little girl was trapped. So they told us, go back to the station. When the coroner's ready, they'll call us back. And myself and my partner were very new. I think we'd only been there, God, I don't know, we probably had like 2-3 years on the job. That was it. And we got the tone to go extricate the child. And my captain turned to me and said, "You guys stay here." And I actually had a little boy that was about 2 at the time. I take that back, about a year and change at the time. And he said, "You're going to see enough horrible stuff in your career. You don't need to add this one to your list." And he was getting ready to retire not too long after that, but I never forgot that. And it really resonated with me that there is no badge of honor of seeing the most horrible shit. And that's what we think when you're young, fired up, whatever, police, fire, EMS. But as you said, they accumulate. And so conversely, I had one, ironically, my last shift of my second last department, where a homeless woman had gone missing. And she was deep in the woods. You could kind of smell way before you got there. And I got the ability to tell them, "All right, you don't come. I'll just go see this one." And as a medic, got to, clearly call it. I mean, she was just hanging from a tree, bits of her hanging from a tree. But just like you said, it's so important, especially if there are, younger first responders listening to this, if you're leaders in the fire service, if they do not have to see it, don't show them. There's nothing to be gained for adding yet another photo to that mental collection.
If you ever want to know what a good leader is, that's a good leader right there.
100%.
Yeah. That is like looking out for your own with young kids that you don't, and his perfect sentence was, "You'll see enough in your lifetime. You don't need to see this." Right. But yeah, it's, you accumulate that trauma over the years and you just compact it away, and it will revisit you. I'm not dumb to the fact that these things don't come back, and, but it's like the more strong that your family is around you or your friendship and the things that you can do. It's like a lot of guys do retire, and what do they tell you? They don't ever want to work again. So what do? They just sit down and they watch TV. They don't do anything. And they got their dream home, but they don't go outside. They don't do anything. Not everybody, but I mean, do something, man, because it just keeps that brain active, and I think it helps. And I'm not an expert at it, and I was asked by a medical doctor if I had PTSD. And I said, I don't know. I honest to God, I don't know if I do. And TBI, I said, I probably have TBI from all the explosive concussions that I've taken over the years from SWAT and the Army, but I don't know how it affects me. And there's a test that I want to go do here in Texas that they can test you for TBI. And so I want to get that tested just so I know. But PTSD, I don't know. And it's not afraid to get tested for it. I think the way I'm living my life now, I'm pretty healthy mentally. So, I think I'm good for right now.
I think when this conversation really first started gaining traction, probably about 10 years ago now, we were all calling everything PTSD. And what's nice is that you've seen this evolution. And of course, don't get me wrong, there are experts in their field that were talking the right way before, but we were all white belts in this world initially. Mm-hmm. But now, you've got operator syndrome, you've got TBIs, you've got CTE, you've got, moral injury, you've got true PTSD. And so, there are all these different kind of nuances to what we're going through. And I think if you look at true PTSD, that is the trigger, that is the car backfiring and you're under a table. I mean, the night terrors, all those things, that's, bona fide PTSD. But then you got moral injury, which is the inability to save, and organizational betrayal, and all these, other things that contribute to us struggling. But I think where I'm at now, because it's the same kind of thing, I really don't have anything that haunts me. And again, the question is why? And I reflect to all the good things in my upbringing that kind of offset. But it's like, but yeah, am I operating at an optimal level? And no, I'm not. Brain fog, fatigue, some other things. And I did combat sports most of my life, got punched and kicked in the head a lot, sleep deprivation. So now I've kind of turned it around. Well, if I optimize, if I go, do some of these therapies, it's only going to help regardless of what you call the thing. Now, if you're really being plagued by it and you're drinking yourself to sleep, and that's a whole different conversation. But for everyone else, why not just try some of these anyway and see if you can just turn the dial up a little bit more? There's nothing to be lost in improving your performance.
Yeah, I agree. And who's to say what'll work for you, what won't work for you, and who am I to say that, no, don't go do that? Why would you say that to somebody if they're willing to try to get their health better? You know what I mean? And so sleep deprivation is I think the number one thing for like fire and law enforcement that are on call out status. Being woken up in the middle of the night constantly from the phone, the pager, it weighs on you. And you do it for so long. The number one thing after I retired, the number one thing that I noticed is I was able to sleep through the night, and it was awesome. Mm-hmm. It was awesome because we were tied on SWAT. We were tied to our phones. I was on that phone so much. And as a team leader, you have various different roles, but you get a lot of phone calls and stuff, and you're calling the sergeants and stuff like that. But after I let that phone go, when I retired, there was just like a huge, the cord was just cut, and it wasn't like I didn't know what to do. I knew what to do, but I was able to, and I woke and I told my wife, I was like, man, this is pretty nice. I can sleep through the night. This is great. You're not getting woken up anymore. It's not like a shock because you come up, you're 10 toes up and you're just dead to sleep, to you just got somebody that's just been shot and killed, and the suspect's on the run, and you're trying to coordinate, get dressed, and you're on your radio and on your phone, and you just woke up 30 seconds ago, And then you turn your lights and sirens on and you're going, and then you learn how to manage that after time. When you're brand new, the analogy is you're looking through a straw. The more you do it, you start broadening your vision out, and then you can start multitasking a little bit better. And a lot of people are like, doesn't this mess with you? And at that time, no, it didn't, because you knew how to manage it and you knew what to do within those certain segments of getting up and organizing and moving towards the target, So, yeah, but sleep is a big thing. Huge, 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 huge. Even for like, if you go and you work out, like people taking hormone therapy to get stronger, and like, that's great. But if your recovery is not there, it's not going to help you. So the sleep it benefits everybody,
Yeah. It's so crazy. And obviously the fire service, I mean, their hours are just insane at the moment. We got this recruitment crisis, which I know law enforcement does too.
Yep.
And you've got, the standard work week is 56. So now you add mandatory overtime, that's immediately 80 hours. And then, a lot of places even worse. And you take a step back and go, so the people that make my coffee tap out at 40 hours a week, but the people I call on my family's worst day to make life-saving decisions and have life-saving athleticism, I'm okay with them working 2 civilian weeks a week. It's absolute insanity, and it's so backwards. But our profession is so kind of brainwashed that even when you bring that to them, they're like, oh, no, that's not a thing, because they're so sleep deprived, they can't even critically think and self-assess to the point, why is my favorite NFL wide receiver getting all the sleep in the world, but I'm going to wake up at 3 a.m., jump in the back of a tiller truck, drive to a fire, go into a 3rd-story window and try and search for a child, and I'm working 80 hours a week. It's pure insanity.
And a lot of people that make those decisions now, they don't jump on the fire truck and go into the fire.
Nope.
They don't do that. And so at that level, and I saw it in law enforcement, in positions, they are there strictly to mitigate anything coming in at them to make their career path smooth. So nope, don't do that. Well, we need this to do that. No, don't cause any bumps. Don't cause any waves. Well, how do you get better? We did very well, and we had some very large fights to bring on new capabilities, like on our team. And it was met with nope. It was met with laughter. And then once we did it, everybody wants to join in, because it was successful. But you have to make it successful, and we had some good guys on our team that made stuff very successful, very successful.
If my memory serves me right, when we spoke on the collective, I think you talked about some of the technology at the end of the career that you fought for, like drones and things like that. So talk to me about these good ideas from the ground, and how were you able to make it happen in your department?
We had a guy that was on our team that was in the Navy. He had gotten deployed and he was working with JSOC. He came back, and he was just sitting there having coffee with us. He goes, I don't know why every law enforcement SWAT team in America doesn't have drones, because he's looking at mitigation of risk, right? I'm like, oh, well, we have technology already. We have robots that go inside of a house, And so we kind of talked about it, and it just started gaining more steam. And there was a team that was in our county that was comprised of 7 different agencies. They had gotten drones. Well, we were looking for a shooter off a freeway one day. So who did we call? The drone. Because why stick your guys in the woods into a gunfight, right? And so we all had canines on our SWAT team. And so we kept utilizing their drone, and we're like, man, this is dumb. Why don't we get our own program? They've got it figured out, right? And so when you do stuff like that, you don't have to create your own SOPs. You can borrow other people's SOPs and create your name on it, and people know that and they share it, right? So we started building our methodology to technology, dog, person, to minimize the risk to us going inside of a house, right? And so we would look at not just one situation and go, guns up, boys, let's go. We're going in. We don't need to go in. Don't go in. So we did vehicle takeoffs, right? We called them MAT teams, mobile arrest teams. We would just get a pattern of life on the guy, and we'd sit on him. When he would leave, we'd take control of him in the vehicle, and we'd wreck him. We were highly successful in those MAT takedowns, highly successful. And so it got to a point where we drafted up a memo, and it went up to the chief, and chief brought it to the sheriff and got kind of scolded by the sheriff. And then it was kind of a joking thing on a team that I will talk to anyone. I don't care who you are. I give you respect and I'm tactful, but I'm not fearful of talking to anyone. And I've talked to very high end people. And so the sergeant was like, I hate to say this, but it's going to take someone like Sprout. That's my nickname. Someone like Sprout to go just talk to the sheriff. So we were doing a protection detail for the sheriff one day. And I just walked up to her and I said, "You got 5 minutes?" She goes, "Yeah, what do you got?" And I literally just laid it on to her about drones. And I said, we're not asking for anything different. It's the same technology. We have to have a warrant before we go in. We're not going to send it in without. We're doing it right now. The only thing a drone offers us, our technology is getting tied up in laundry baskets and clothing on the ground. This sets us up about 4 feet off the ground. The only thing that's going to stop us is a closed door. I like it. Set up the meeting. And then we got them. So, there's 100 people that will tell you no. Right. But if you revisit it, 98 of them still might say no, but 2 of them might go, all you need is that one person. You just need one person. And sometimes it is who it comes from. If I have a disdain for you and I don't like you, whatever idea you come with me, I'm going to shoot down. But Mike, I like him. He comes in with the verbatim, same thing that you have, and I'll take hit. You see what I'm saying? And so human nature. And so, but we never played like politics. Everything was factually driven. It's like we built a huge maritime program, fast roping out of helicopters, shooting out of helicopters, all built from 2 guys on our SWAT team. And then the team joined in and rebuilt it even more and then got better and then got better. And then it's a huge capability that we have. And so we started fast roping under underway vessels, opposed boardings. We got equipment, we got boats, we got everything grant driven from us. We got a lot of money to the department through grants that benefited a lot of individual departments within the agency. And so you got to find someone. We were doing this maritime stuff, and I'll give you an example of our risk management contacted me and said, "Hey, we've been doing this and we're not covered insurance wise." And I went to my buddy and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I never even thought of that." Because we're just deputies, right? I'm like, "I've never thought of that." Like, uh-oh. So they told me we're gonna purchase another addendum worth $1 million while you guys do these exercises. And I'm like, I can't give the okay for that. I'm just a deputy. The sheriff cornered me one day and he goes, "I don't know how you got them to write off on that, but good on you." Because what I did though is I brought them out onto a boat that we were going to fast rope onto. And I sat them down and literally, and I'm not joking, probably 15 feet above their head was a Black Hawk helicopter throwing ropes out and our guys sliding down. And they just thought that was the coolest thing. But what I did to them is I said, "You're on land and you call 911. How confident you feel a cop will show up?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." Now you're on a ferry. Washington State has the largest ferry system in the nation. Now you're on a ferry and you call 911. And they went, "Oh, I don't know." I go, "I didn't say me. I didn't say my buddy. I didn't say SWAT. I said King County figured out a way to get to you and to stop it." And you would have thought I just invented like the apple seed or something. You know what I mean? They just thought that was the neatest thing. And so it depends on how you deliver it to people too. Because if I come up there of just kind of a bravado, like, "We need to do this." Why? Just because we need to do this. That stuff doesn't, you're trying to build a capability. So sell it for what it's worth and give them what you can and be professional about it. And then, everyone loves cool stuff. Everyone, guys and girls. And so when I brought them out on the boat, they still to this day, they talk about it. They loved it, So it's how you deliver things too, to get what you want.
Well, back to what you were talking about as far as borrowing the neighboring organizations' SOPs. This is what I'm seeing, because obviously the changing the firefighter work week is not sexy. There's no Black Hawk helicopters to show people. It's just getting them to understand the proactive nature of rest and recovery and health and performance. But the organizations that have gone to it, the departments that have gone to it now, I've watched them bend over backwards to share, to help other departments, to say, "This is what we did. You're slightly different, so you'll have to adapt it this way. But here's all the tools that we use. Here's how we presented it to our city, to our county. Here's where the hurdles were. Here's how we got around it." And it's so beautiful to watch, because the opposite side of that conversation is the union president, fire chief, city or county council members, whoever the barriers are, that, as you said, well, I go home at 5 on a Friday, so I really don't care, which I think is nauseating to me personally, that these people are making this sacrifice and away from their families and you won't even fight for them. But the rising tide lifts all ships, where you do see the real leaders in these organizations. It's incredible watching that true brotherhood and sisterhood, the humility to ask, hey, how are you doing this? And the humility to say, well, we will share it. We want you, other departments, to get better as well. And I think that is how we change our professions for the better.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to give the keys away to your castle that you've built. Don't get me wrong, but we cross-shared a bunch. There's a pretty large school that a lot of SWAT guys go to in Arkansas, and it's a great school. And there's a little talk group that they formed, all the graduates from this school. And you get on there and it's like, hey, we're trying to get nods, night vision goggles, on our team. Can somebody tell me how they approach their admin? And someone will jump in and says, hey, DM me. I'll give you everything I have at how we approach. I mean, this cross sharing is a beautiful thing, because you want other people to succeed at what you're doing and what you've done. And so, and it's only for the better, and so there'll be things that a department does that we're like, nah, I don't want to do it that way. When we first started shooting out of the helicopter, I went to San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office and asked them for their SOP. And I took that SOP as a boiler point, and we started ours, And so people have taken, I've given out our SOPs to Alaska, And so there's nothing that's detrimental in there, nothing that's going to give the keys away to your castle, but cross-sharing to help other teams build something. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Why wouldn't you?
No, exactly. I think that's it. It's humility. And I think this is the problem that I discovered really when I was transitioning out, is how siloed law enforcement, fire really are. And you look at, you've got, it's insane. I watched it with Orange County in Orlando. You've got these departments that won't even play with each other, won't talk to each other. You've got FD and PD that don't like each other in other areas. And it's like, how did this even happen? But again, this is egos. It's all it is, because I have stood by a trailer park on a rescue, on a fire ambulance, watching a transformer start a fire in a trailer park, asking my dispatch just to send the closest unit, and they're going back and forth saying whose jurisdiction it is. I can see Orlando's fire engine from where I'm standing. Just send the fucking fire engine to come put the fire out. But this is the danger when you get egos involved and we miss the mission. The mission is to protect lives, to save lives. And ego is like, well, our department's better than yours. Well, shame on you. How come you're not helping elevate that department, if that really is the case, so that you're all on the same page? So no matter where your family have their emergency, all those EMS, fire, and law enforcement agencies are prepared for that emergency.
Absolutely. We cross-shared with our fire guys pretty good. We all love to joke, right? They have the best schedule in the world. They love chili, right? They love ice cream. But we started a rescue task force in our county, our team sergeant at the time with some paramedics, and it spread like wildfire. And man, there was so much pushback. We are not going to send medics or fire guys into a school shooting when the shooter is still actively in there. And we brought it all the way back to, what is our job? Exactly. To stop the threat and save lives. So if I can bring a protection detail in with you to start triaging why 100 teams are out already looking for a suspect to eliminate the suspect, and that built that up pretty good. And we would do, so when you guys have like a burn house for training, we would come in and do like explosive breaching on it, or we do some clearing. So we would cross share homes back and forth between fire. One of the coolest breaching techniques I've ever learned, and I hate to say this, but I learned from a firefighter. And you could get into a door. It's a specific door, like a gymnasium, outward opening metal door with a breaker bar on it. Mm-hmm. And you're on the outside, and all you've got is the hand. You don't, instead of prying it, and trying to pry it, but your metal beam is your center beam is metal, and then your frame is encased into concrete. So he showed me a trick with a chainsaw, just a chainsaw, how to get in and hit the breaker bar. I was like, man, and that gets you in so quick. So I give credit to the fire guys. Like, and we were all hazmat techs on our team. We had to go through the 40-hour hazmat tech. So we all had SCBAs, lion suits. And so we did a lot of stuff. We did some controlled burns or training burns up with the fire department. They put us on the nozzles and stuff like that. And we were with Seattle Fire, and, you know, we didn't work a lot with Seattle Fire, but when I talked to those guys there, they were absolutely for it. And it kind of shocked me. I didn't think that they would be for it. They even let me drive their tiller truck. I got in the back and I got to drive that thing. So it was pretty cool with the mindset of like, yeah, man, let's go in there and save lives and put the fire out. And if you're here and there's a shooter in there still shooting at us, we can't get to the fire. So we're going to put a detached nozzle, I don't even know what it's called, onto your armored truck so you could get up there and you could start hitting that with where it needs to be, and then maybe take care of so people kind of, let's solve the problem together. Let's not fight against each other to try to solve a problem that doesn't really solve anything. You know what I mean? So, but it's a lot of hitting your head on concrete, and it's never from the lower guys like you and I. We're like, that's cool. We're like, yeah, that's cool. Let's do this. Once you get to above in that admin stage, it's like, oh, no, I don't think so. And you hear all the why you can't and I don't knows. And then they just ghost you and they won't get back to you. And so, but like me, I'll email you every week until you get mad at me, So, yeah.
With the SWAT medic program, I've seen various different kind of models. And to me, the medic that's not put through the law enforcement side, so therefore can't carry a sidearm, and therefore is almost in a very warm area in that scenario, it didn't make perfect sense to me. It seemed like if you're going to put them in, of course, the medic isn't kicking the door in, and point man or anything, but to have the ability to have a weapon, even though you're there functioning as a medical capability, to me seemed to make the most sense of all the different models. Which one did you guys have, and was that the ideal one in your eyes?
No, it wasn't. It was your job is to save lives. My job is to protect you. And so one task, one guy, and so we left it with that. And the paramedics that went in on the rescue task force, they were not armed. They would have vests, right, extra with plates and stuff. And so we worked alongside our paramedics, where we were able to bring canines and paramedics onto a opposed boarding on a maritime situation. And so, because we brought on all the shooters and the breachers, but we didn't have any canines. So we learned a way to get canines. I learned that from the Canadians up there going to that week-long school I went to. And then we also built into like, well, when we're here, there's people that are injured. Shouldn't we be fast roping paramedics in with us so they can triage these people? And so they had a very specific task to do, and we had a very specific task to do. And so we just came up with the rescue task force, where they would do the triage and we would protect them. So they're not trying to use their firearm, but treat a patient. You know what I mean? They're going back and forth.
Well, this wasn't by any means in engaging the shooter unless everything went to shit. And now you're not unarmed in the worst case scenario.
Right. And so, but we're never going to leave you alone where you're in a position where you may have to fight. We'll fight for you, is what we came up with. And so it ran pretty good. And there are some smaller teams that have their paramedics that go through a qualification course to carry a firearm. I don't see any problem with that, right? As long as they know their primary role. And there's other ones that their admin or absolutely won't let them carry a gun, So they may want to carry a gun, but their admin won't let them. And so, but I would say whoever saves the victim and kills the shooter and gets out and everyone's alive has a good program. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
You can do it both ways.
Well, speaking of that, before we kind of transition to CrossFit, when you again look back now, I mean, we've had decades now of this horrendous, issue with so many murders in our schools. What in your opinion, is the best model as far as the prevention side, and then any takeaways as far as the responding units?
Well, I'll tell you the prevention right now that I've preached my whole career. You put a cop in every single school and you publicize it. People do not go to hard targets and try to fight because they know there's opposition there. If you look at all of our celebrities, and if you look at all of our governmental officials, what do they have around them? Security, right? And so you have your one-offs, you have your attempts on your assassinations of your presidents and stuff like that. But they're very far few in between. But if you are someone that wants to do ill and you want easy targets, you will walk into a school, you will walk into a church, you will walk into a preschool, because you know nobody will oppose you. Once you know that someone is going to oppose you and offer a fight against you, you will second guess your target. And that's what it is. So I've always said, put your money where your mouth is. Put a cop in every single school in the U.S., every single school. Pay for it, but publicize it. Watch your shootings go way down, like way down. But it always comes back to money. It always comes back to money. And so some schools are very large where they would need like maybe 2 officers. And then they gave this bad plague of, we don't want cops in schools. Like, we've allowed people to think that cops are bad. And this whole, in 2020, 2021, put this false narrative out that we're just out randomly shooting and killing people for just funs and giggles. And it's not true. And everyone knew it wasn't true. And the stats are there, but no one would ever look at the stats through the FBI that they carried because they knew what it showed. So they went based off feeling, and then they allowed other generations to be raised up into this. Oh, I just hate cops. Why? Cops are human. They do things that are not right. If you go to another cop and you say, hey, this guy just committed a felony, you're going to stick by him, right? Thin blue line? No. You don't get to be a cop and commit a crime, dude, and expect me to protect you. We've had those discussions many times through my career with guys I've worked with. I am not going to ruin my career for something that you do, and I'm not going to lie for you. So don't do it. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to back you and do everything we need to do. But you don't get to commit a crime and then ask me to like lie for you or ask me to not say something. I've seen guys lose their job over taking $20 from a traffic stop out of a guy's wallet. And another cop knew it, but he said nothing about it and said, oh, I didn't know. Well, they fired him. Like, you just lost your job for some dude's dumb decision. And so should he be fired for taking money from somebody? Yeah. We've had millions of dollars laid out in front of us, drugs and kilos. And that's just the nice thing about where I came from and how I was raised is my dad always told me, it doesn't bother me. It's not my money. You know, I never, because you'll arrest some people and they'll be like, come on, man, you've been tempted. Come on, you've been tempted. I'm like, no, I haven't. It's not my money. What would I do with a kilo of cocaine? You could sell it. Like, no, I couldn't. I'm not,
eBay.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just like this fantasy. They watch too much TV. And if you watch TV, you know, all the cops. Now, cops do bad things because they're human, but they need to be weeded out just like doctors or lawyers or anything else that do things that are unethical, you know? But yeah, crazy.
What about, because you had quite a unique lens as far as the part of the country that seemed to be very deeply entrenched in the defund pushback of that era. What did you see with your own eyes or hear from your men and women as far as the negative impact of that anti-cop movement that we had?
Well, you see crime rates shoot up. Other people go in to get hurt and victims that don't need to be because of that. So that just caused all certain amount of crimes to go up, and the data's there, and it shows that it went up. And you know, politician A will get in front of a camera and say, no, they're down, because they'll twist stats and stuff like that. But no, they're up, and we all knew they were up, and we all knew what was going to happen when they did this. But then, you know, it's hard for you to go out every day and think you're doing something for the betterment of good, all to go home and hear someone from your admin or someone from your county talk down on you, you know? And I don't care how strong you are, that eats your soul a little bit when you turn on the news and just see the compounding effect on law enforcement, and then they play race against race, this, and then they do this tit for tat. They never listen, or they never list like what the crime was. They just play that this guy looked like this and this guy looked like this, and then they leave that alone, and they know what they're doing. They're causing controversy, and then this extremism, right, that we talked about earlier, and people attach to that, and then the people that do nothing sit at home and they're just like, yeah, those cops are bad. You know what I mean? So it's like, I've told many people that I've had many discussions with people on the street in downtown Seattle, in the hood, and I tell them, have you ever done a ride along with a cop? I said, you should go do a ride along with a cop. Don't expect anything from it. Just go do a ride along. You can do a couple hours, 4 hours, and then come back and talk to me. But see, when you make them come up with a little bit of ownership, they don't want to do that. They just rather just talk off emotion. So the people that talk off emotion, I just don't have time for you, because you're not willing to get to a betterment solution or have another way of solving something. You see what I'm saying? And so, but everyone's different. Everyone's got their own little voice. Everyone wants to get heard. And some people just want to yell at you, and then they feel better about themselves and they go home and eat zucchini or whatever they freaking eat. I don't know. But, where we were at in the county where I was at, we had backwoods guys, residents to inner city residents. So you had contrasting even within the county. And so you could be talking to some backwoods redneck, and I don't mean that in a bad term, because I like rednecks, and and then you go back in the inner city and you got somebody that's a part of the gang member that's in the inner city, and how do you able to communicate between the two of them, So, yeah.
I remember the second last department I worked for, neighboring, like almost button up with each other, was just like you were talking about, very, very kind of impoverished trailer park, country, very white area. And then that butted up against another area that was very, very densely populated, especially with people with Haitian backgrounds. And so very similar kind of activity in different ways. And it is irrelevant of their skin color. What the issue was poverty. Both groups were poor, and so therefore you saw similar behaviors. But you didn't see that conversation in post 2020, in the pro or cons, not addressing underlying mental health issues and poverty and education, and trying to stop the domino effect of trauma so that we can start bringing cohesion back into households again. None of that.
I will tell you, from the people that I've talked to on the streets, more people believed and understood and agreed with what we were doing than what you would see on TV.
I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, we're pivoting now to a different topic. I came across CrossFit in about 2006, so kind of early, before it was cool, as they say, with one of my friends, Neil, who was an Anaheim firefighter. He worked at a CrossFit Marina in Huntington Beach. And so he came back and he had this like cannonball with a handle like for elderly pirates and some other things, and we're like, what the fuck is all this? And so I'll try your stupid workout. And at the end I was like, all right, I need to do this. This was absolutely awful. And I was sold. And all the way through to about 2 years ago, where we shifted our programming a little bit, I saw the incredible benefits for my profession and the CrossFit training. So how did you come across that particular kind of modality? And then talk to me about how much it impacted your life.
We were talking, and it was, hey, these Navy SEAL guys are doing this thing called CrossFit. It's out of California. I don't know. So we looked up a CrossFit gym, and it was now it's the oldest affiliate in the world. It's out of Puyallup, Washington. Rainier CrossFit. We joined Rainier CrossFit, and it was $50 a month. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. And that was 2005. And so we did the workouts, and it just blew me away. I'd never done anything like it. And some things like farmers carries, like what like farm strength or you do stuff on the ranch and stuff like that. But it's like the cleans and all the stuff, combining it with the deadlifts and stuff like that. It was crazy. And then we just kept going back and doing it. And then we were doing 2 workouts in a day, and that about killed me. But it was very, very, very functional for what we did on SWAT. And I did it. We joined because of SWAT. And so my daughters were 7 and 9, and I got them involved in it to do just like body weight movement and stuff like that. And as they grew up, we just started adding more weight. We did a lot of research on body development for young kids, lifting weights, which there was this old brain that you couldn't do it, and it was all quashed. And they got into it enough where I think it was 14. My daughter did her first competition in Houston, Texas, and then they started competing after that. And so we've been off and running, and it worked great for my job, and they just got into the competitive side of it. And we're training, 2 or 3 times a day now for them. So
how old are they now?
21 and 19. And so they do the CrossFit Open every year, and we're looking for measurement skills. We're looking for measurement of you're better than you were last year. Each year has to be better than last year or something's wrong. And then we're flying to Spokane, Washington, the beginning of January to do a comp. James Sprague is putting on a competition there. He's a CrossFit Games athlete. He won the games in 2024, but we've known him. We've worked out with him before. And then come back from there, and then we go to just outside of Austin, Texas, the end of January for another big competition. And then they made Team USA 5 years ago. And so we've been to Sweden, Norway, Mexico, Canada, Budapest, and they've competed in the IF3 Worlds there. And we didn't make it we didn't go this year because of logistics. The whole team didn't go. And so we're going to go next year. And I don't know where it's going to be at yet, though.
What really became apparent to me when I moved to America is how many Uncle Ricos I met. And what I mean is, men in their late 20s, early 30s. And it was always this I coulda, woulda, shoulda if it wasn't for my ACL, my labrum insert destroyed joint here. And I started going, well, what the hell are we doing to children in this country? Because where I grew up, the era I grew up, at least, no one was playing at a high level unless they were being farmed to be, the England football team, or the best athletes obviously would just rise to the top, and then they would be, trying out for these teams, and off they go. But the rest of us were just playing. And so there was no steep drop off between graduating school and the rest of adulthood. We just kept playing, pub leagues, or just, kicking the ball around the park, or, whatever it was. And what I realized is that there was this kind of dark side of American sports where the performance of a child was more important than the health and longevity of a child. So talk to me if you have any kind of perspective of that at all in this world. And then how were you able to avoid that through this incremental training that you've used with your daughters?
I guess better described on how I just raised my kids. And so I have done things in my life that I'm very proud of. I do not need to relive my life in front of my own kids because they were part of what I've done. And so I've always said, be proud of what you've done and who you are. Once you've met that mark, then you build others to be what they need to be. And so, like I said earlier, with the kids growing into a family, that's their first team. My wife played college ball, soccer, competitively. She got recruited to a college, and then she played, high school, select soccer is what they call it. And so we put 3 things on a piece of paper when I talked to my daughters about they were probably 10 and 12. And we said, they wrote down the 3 things that they want to do in life: soccer, CrossFit, and horses. And I said, now prioritize them. And they both put CrossFit as number 1. The reason I started them in CrossFit was to build their hips and knee joints and ligaments to strengthen them for soccer, because they were both playing soccer. And so my wife has had 3 knee surgeries. And so they put CrossFit as number 1. So what we did is we took what they said they wanted, And we started going with it. And then we started training. And then we started doing competitions. And then it kind of grew from there. This whole time, it's kind of a running joke. I'll go into the gym and I always get the dudes are like, hey, man, you let your daughters outlift you. I said, they can't outlift me. They're 19 and 21. You know what I mean? I cannot back squat what my 21-year-old daughter back squats. I'm sorry. You know, I don't need to tell them I've had 21 surgeries or anything like that. It doesn't bother me. And so everyone thinks I'm being put down by my own daughters. I'm like, and I always tell them, I'm like, how do you think they got that way? Who do you think built them to be like that? I did, you know, but I don't need to thrust upon them of what I have done. Now I use my experience as examples when we're training and building them up to do something, right? How to overcome something, and things that I've gone through, but, they just stayed with it. They picked it. They said they wanted it. So they showed ownership to it. And then we just stayed on it. And then as things progress, they say, hey, I want to compete here. Hey, I want to do here. And I've told them all along, you could quit CrossFit at any time. I don't care, but you need to pick something else and stay with that, you know? So there was kind of priorities that we had in our household is, priority number one is, family comes first, respectful and always family will always come first. Number two, do good in school. Number three, whatever you do, and I don't care what it is, don't quit, give 100% towards it. And so they just kind of got into that. We got approached for the Team USA IF3 world stuff, started doing that, started traveling with that. And then these higher end competitions. And we're still pushing the envelope on that because there's a ton of people that are still stronger and faster and better than you. But we look at measurement tools of growth each year. And if, like I said, if we get better each year, there's growth there. Now I look at the measured growth. If it's too small, we need to jump it up a little bit. But what we didn't do is we didn't put them on such a mental regiment of you need to be up at 5 a.m., your first workout, then you come in and eat broccoli and chicken, and then you go back out and then you take a nap. What happens is you can become a phenom and you will be the head of everybody, and you can be a podium stander for multiple times, but it won't last long. And we've watched many people over the years quit the sport, and it's not because of their physical attributes, but it's because of their mental attributes. They just couldn't keep that regiment up because it weighs heavy on the brain. So we said, hey, we'll take longer to get there, but we're going to let your mind rest a little bit. And so they eat what they want. Everyone thinks we're on a diet. We don't diet. They eat what they want, but they're very selective. Those girls will not eat fast food, will not do it. We'll be starving on the drive somewhere and they will not stop. You know what I mean? They just won't do it. So they know what to eat. They look at more macros than the macros that they have. They take their supplement protein, creatine and stuff. Other than that, everything's natural. We don't do anything. It's just the creatine and the protein for them. And then the training and then their sleep. And so we travel. We'd go to 1 or 2 countries every single year with them. And so it lets them see the world, enjoy, you know, and they eat what they want when they're over there and stuff, but they know what they have to do. So you're going to take a little bit longer to get where you want to go. But besides all that, and if they never make it to the CrossFit Games and they never make it on the podium, what you've just done is you've built an awesome human being in the process. And so my thing is that through strength, you will build compassion. And once they're both phenomenal coaches, so they coach. We got down here in Texas and they're trying to work with athletes down here, primarily focusing now more towards like rodeo athletes, because when I rodeoed, you just kind of cowboyed up and just rode and sucked up the pain. Now they realize the healthier the body is and the mind, their longevity in the sport goes longer, minus a catastrophic injury, right? So they're going to be offering up to some bull riders, and they've already given their cards out to guys that ride bulls and rough stock. And they think just stretching and doing some jumping jacks is okay. What these girls know now, and they're both coaches through CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting coaches, it's in their mobility. Man, if I knew what they knew when I was their age, it'd be a different ball game for me. Totally different ball game. But yeah, so.
How are you able to pull on the reins a little bit if ever a situation arises where it seems they're trying to push the envelope too much on lifts or something like that?
So, when you really, really, really want something. So I'll just pick a clean, right? And let's say you're going for a 225 pound clean. Okay. And you've built your way up to it and you try to get that clean and something's not right. Your technique's off or something. You're pulling all the way through or something. You're like, okay, you debrief what needs to be done and you go back over and they try it again. I'll get about that third try. You start, I've explained to them like, hey, we could sit here all day. I can watch you fail that all day long. What better are you going to leave in the gym? So here's what you do. You drop that 5 pounds, you hit a 220, you go away, not 100% pleased, but you're about 80% pleased. And so not every day that you're in the gym is glorious. It's just not. It affects everybody. And so we've never had too many battles on that. On certain things growing up, it's hard. What I've had to struggle with is like, hey, we need to go a little bit faster. And their fear of pushing their body faster because they know they're going to get fatigued and that felt fatigue on the body and they don't like it. And so fighting what everyone has to fight, right? If I tell you to walk a mile with a farmer carry, at some point in that mile, you're going to set the weights down. But how do you overcome that felt fatigue mentally and keep going, right? And so trying to get them to understand that don't be fearful of it, learn how to manage it. And so sometimes to go faster, but we have pretty good conversations, but we have very direct conversations. And so if people overhear us in the gym talking, I talk to my girls like grown adults, and I always have. People are like, whoa, he is intense. And some people think, oh, he's living vicariously through his own daughters. That's what he's doing. And he's trying to project. No, I'm not. They told me what they wanted, and I'm holding them accountable for what they want. They wanted it. But it's not anything detrimental. No one sees the hugs and the kisses and I loves yous at home. They only see a 5-second integration of me talking to the girls, telling them truthfully, yeah, you sucked. But it's the same thing that I tell myself, right? And so it's not hurtful in any way. But yeah, so truth, direct communication, and then we just take things as they come, in the gym.
What is your perspective on law enforcement or first responder fitness standards or lack thereof in a profession where lives are at stake?
I think it's horrible because that's one of the things that you have to make sure that you're physically fit. You could watch a video right now and you can watch a cop being so fatiguely out of shape that the suspect either gets away or gets their gun, and it's like, what? But we've pushed so much of not a kind of a warrior's ethos on law enforcement. And it's more of a softer guardian ethos. Well, what happens is you bring more weaker mindset in people and like, oh, it just won't happen. It won't happen. It won't happen. Well, at 2:00 in the morning in the hood, it's very different than day shift in the upscaled neighborhoods where the Starbucks are. When you come face to face and someone's sizing you up that's been to prison before, they don't care. They don't care that you're a male or female. You know what I mean? But again, that's how you communicate with people. I think that standard is a must. I just do. There's a lot of departments that don't have it because they know what'll happen. People won't pass it. And so like the state I came out of, Washington, they've lowered their standard where you don't even run anymore. You don't have to run to get in the academy. And so what do you think happens? So a lot more overweight people are getting in to become law enforcement officers, and that's not me picking fun on anybody. It's like, look at their graduation photographs time and time again, And so, are you going to have to run? Yeah. I ran many times as a cop, you know what I mean? So, there's damn flies in my face over here. But I wish more departments would be more proactive in doing it, but sadly they're not because they know what'll happen. The numbers will deplete. And so my mindset is if you build a strong team, people want to be part of a strong team and you build other strong members of that team. But when you have a weak team, their standards get to loose, SOPs get loose, everything gets loose, everything's blaming everyone else loose. And there's, you know what I mean? The military's figured all of this out, all of this, what's bad and what's good. But I don't know. I just wish they did that. I mean, that's my thing.
I've seen through my experience, I've definitely worked for one of the best fire departments and one of the worst in America. I'll leave people to figure out which is which. But the good one was notorious, certainly when I was there, for their probation. By the end of the year, they would lose 25% of the recruits through attrition.
Mm-hmm.
They put the bar high, and they were like, there it is. And they even, I think, overhired, so they would kind of absorb that. Conversely, the other one, that you didn't even do any PT when you were in their orientation, if there were, 5, vacancies, there might be 9 people applying, and it paid better and had a little bit more time off than the other one, other sides of the country. But so I saw that lowering standards does not work. If that was the case, that place would have had hundreds of thousands of candidates because the bar was in a trench below ground. So, it's so maddening seeing that. And going back to what you said, as far as that confidence, so many people have had on the show from law enforcement that were in great shape, that had martial arts training, had reportedly the least hands-on events, because the air quotes bad guy would look at them and go, yeah, I'm not going to try and mess with Sebastian Lavoie or whoever it is, because they just appear like they would be able to whoop my ass. And so your downs are just the very few now. But you look at the deconditioned officer that's never even been uncomfortable before, even your average person's probably look at them and go, well, I could outrun them in a foot chase. And as you said, sadly, we've seen them. And it's all fun and games, ha, 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 on the Instagram, unless you put the scenario, right, that guy's got a knife and he's running towards a kindergarten. Not so funny now, is it? So I think this is such an important conversation in fire, in law enforcement, and even EMS. There seems to be an allowance on the EMS where we have to go, say you were a single cert paramedic and you're called to the Vegas shooting. They're not just going to wheel everyone to you. You're going to have to go in there and start dragging bodies. So all of our professions collectively should be held to a high standard.
I agree. And like that Vegas thing, now you're there and the elevators are down and you need to get upstairs. Now you're climbing stairs and you got your aid bags with you. You know what I mean?
Which are heavy.
Yeah. And are you stopping every floor to catch your breath? So there are some people that do self-reflection and they take it upon themselves. I just wish the departments, like my department, fostered that healthier living, but it's money and it's numbers. And so their thing is, with the numbers, they need you out on the street. You know what I mean? And so they need to put more people out on the street. And then, well, we don't have the money to, pay for 50% off of a gym membership, but you got enough money to spend on a lawsuit. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like you're going to pay either or. And so it's been shown throughout time and history, hard standards, good standards, strong people create less problems. There are problems, don't get me wrong, but there are less problems than weak people, because everything starts to dissipate and your boundaries get wider and wider and wider. People are doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. Gets overlooked. But when you have a standard, it doesn't matter if you're if you're a team leader, right? And I'm just a guy, I should be able to call you out tactfully, right? But there's people that are getting this bravado, like they become a leadership and then they start gaining weight. And then you can't do. It was harder. Me and my buddy had a discussion. It was harder for us to be on the team at 18 years on as team leaders, because we had to stay up with the new guys coming in. You know what I mean? We had to make sure that we were shooting on par or better. We had to make sure that we were on par or better physical fit. We had to make sure that we were on par or better as far as skills. You know what I mean? And so you were constantly trying to get better. And we had a very strong run with no lawsuits on my tenure. I don't think we had any lawsuits. But we did a lot of stuff, and very professional, but we had standards and we took care of internal stuff, harshly sometimes, but it wasn't really harsh. It was direct, So, but yeah.
I had a former cop on the show who now has a background investigation company, and it was a really
Mhm.
interesting conversation. He was at a conference, and I forget who what kind of expert was on the stage, but he'd asked how much does it cost to get rid of a bad employee in law
Yeah.
enforcement, and the guy said $500,000. So when we're lowering this bar, because whether it's, I mean, I think we should absolutely encapsulate anyone who's taken the job seriously, has met all the standards, and they happen to, as you just said, get hurt on the job. We need to get them back to, as near as perfect as possible and put all our resources in there. But we all know that when you don't set the standard high and you don't forge that camaraderie and community within our profession and hold everyone up to the same standard, that some people will take advantage of it. And now you've got these kind of fake workman's comp claims and disabilities, and that's what they were alluding to. Or, as you said, a mistake with a lawsuit, and now you're probably talking about millions then. So it's a
Yeah.
complete false economy. When you
Yeah.
actually look at it and you take the downstream money and you put it up front, you end up saving money hand over fist with a high bar and a God, what's the friggin' term I'm looking for? With full recruitment is what I'm trying to say. Like everyone in that the vacancy is filled with the right kind of person in the first place.
Now go to a business that's in the business of making money with products, and then take them the mold of your old department and say, hey, would this work here? It would be absolutely not. Right? Where's the growth? Where's the production greater than last year? What are we doing to make our people better salesmen or what? Right? You have to put money into people for training. You have to. If you want less problems, like I said, the military's figured this out. But it's a money thing, and it's a numbers thing. It really is. And it's just, God, it's sad. We've fought in many battles and we've won many battles. We've lost some, but I'll often remember, like, it shouldn't be this hard to fight to go try to save somebody's life. You know what I mean? I just don't understand the concept, but because there's money attached to it. And so that's the biggest fight. And then when you're limited on your money for law enforcement, because everyone thinks that law enforcement are fully funded and they have all the money in the world. No, they do not. Right? There was things that we were making at home, bringing to use on the team. When I first started on the team, you used your own sniper rifle. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah. It's just like, and so you're always fighting for money to get something. So grants were great because grants helped get you certain capabilities and tools and tech that augmented so the department didn't have to pay for it. Right. And so we've gotten helicopter engines, we've gotten boats, we've gotten all kinds of stuff through the grant money, and it's a great program, but it's for a reason. But you fight, and you just kind of got to pick your battles on what you want. There's some that we've let go of, and we didn't realize. My buddy fought hard for the explosive breaching one, and they thought we were going to put bombs on doors and blow people up because they didn't know. So what did he do? He educated them, and once they knew, they're like, "Oh, that's it." You know what I mean? So it's worth it. I will say it's worth it, but you will bleed. You will bleed a little bit, but it's worth it. And so I can look back. This is what I like about it. I can look back now and say, I'm glad for what I did, and I'm happy with what I did, and I'm content with what I've done, rather than leaving that career saying, man, I wish I would have. I wish I would have spoke up. I've said my mind many times. And I've gone back and I've apologized for speaking my mind sometimes because I might have been wrong. But yeah, I'm content with what I've done. And I think that time that I had on our team with my buddy and the guys on that team, that we did some great stuff and we built some awesome capabilities.
Did your friend manage to get that breaching program approved by breaching the council's door and then throwing a flashbang in there just so they could get that full immersive experience?
No, no.
Show and tell, bitch.
Yeah. We've learned, though, you bring those decision makers out. So when we did aerial shooting program, we brought the sheriff out and we let the sheriff watch the snipers get up in the aircraft and shoot out of the helicopter. And she realized, and I told her, I said, Mother Earth is your backstop. If you miss, for some chance, you miss your suspect. I said, you get close proximity to your target, and your miss is maybe like 6 inches, but it's into the ground. It's not traveling through the air over a mile into some neighborhood, certain things like that. So certain things like that. And so you just got to bring people into kind of like, oh, that's all it is? Or, oh, I didn't realize that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, I want to transition to what I want to go to your transition, not to use the same word twice, before we go to some closing questions. So at what point did you realize that you want to transition out? And then let's talk about your transition from law enforcement now into what you're doing today.
I knew I wanted to transition out during the whole kind of 2020 COVID thing. I'll say it was horrible what they did to law enforcement. Absolutely horrible. And I called my dad. I ran my financials to him. And it was my wife that looked at me and said, go. And so I had been contracting for 6 years while I was still working. And that's kind of every time the government gets shut down or funding gets pulled, that can stop, So I never put any like hard ownership or income value on that, but it was something I did and I like. And so when I did transition, I still coach. I still do motivational talks to colleges and high schools and people. I still have clients. Mental skills stuff for coaching for soccer teams, football teams, rodeo athletes. I do all of those things still, and little pots of money there for me to come in, plus my retirement. But then I also go do my overseas stuff. So I'm going to be in the Middle East sometime mid next year. So I like doing that. You're over there. I like the program from what it's worth. I like what it does and what you're building for guys. So, yeah, I just continue to do that.
That fly is madly in love with you,
Dude,
it? It hasn't left
God
you alone
dang,
for like
I
20
tell
minutes.
you, I know, man. I need to try to kill it.
All right. Well, I want to go to some closing questions so I can be mindful of your time. The first one I love to ask, is there a book or are there books that you love to recommend? It can be related to our discussion today or completely unrelated.
I don't read a lot of books, right? So, which is kind of ironic because I wrote a book, right? So, my book that I wrote was on Amazon for Your Greatest Investment, Raising Strong Kids Through the Family Foundation, right? And so it's just 60 pages of something small and how we raised our girls. And so I would have more value in talking to you and life experience than reading a book. And so I've read some excerpts of books that were recommended to me. But what happens is, and I read books prior to writing my book, and I got into this whole fluff. They're filling pages. And you can tell by when they're talking, they're just filling pages to get more pages in the book. I have no value for that because that doesn't give me a solution. And so someone that's direct communicator like you, that's more truthful, I can get more value out of you listening to you, talking to you than I can with a book. And so there's people that do read books, depending on the author. There's someone out there that you probably would want to read because you value their opinion, and they don't do that. That's great. But we stay pretty active and pretty busy in our household. So I just have a hard time sitting and reading. You know what I mean? Unless if it's shorter and more direct and to the point. I like stuff like that, so a book off the top of my head. I can't think of one. I'm just not a heavy reader, but I'll listen to podcasts and I'll listen to other people and I'll talk to other people in life, Have
you ever read Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe?
No.
You would like his stuff. I kind of not even modeled. I found it was the same thing. Like I'm a very lean writer, and he is as well. I think his books are like 130 pages, and he's hitting on some. I mean, the Tribe is incredible. It's recommended on here over and over and over again. But he's got a couple of. I'm trying to remember. Freedom is one. And his latest one he did actually on a near-death experience that he had. But yeah, every single word counts in his books. And I agree completely. There's nothing worse than going through 300 pages and going, so basically the title is this whole book, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, like I said, there's guys out there that have books that are very valuable. I would basically, instead of research, I would have someone like you tell me, read this book. You know what I mean? And it's more kind of like what you would like. That would spark my interest to maybe look it up and read it, versus me going out in the atmosphere and just trying to find a book, But I did read a lot of parenting books, and not the full books itself, but I would go in from kind of the beginning, I'd get in the middle, and I'd kind of go to the end. And I was like, I can't believe that people are buying this. I just can't. Now, there's 100 different ways to parent. Don't get me wrong. Right. But when you're trying to parent, it almost looks at it like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, the author. And it's just like, my whole goal was to build strong, confident female girls, and that know their worth. And so they had no cell phones until they were in high school. So they're not doing stupid shit on Instagram. They don't have Snapchat. But what does every dude ask them? What's your Snapchat channel? They don't have it. They're adults now. They still don't have it. Focus and career driven for both of them, and then having something to do in the side of a competitive side is CrossFit, but that I just used my experience of raising our family and how we did it and showcased it in my book. But another book like that, yeah, absolutely, I would read it. I'm not against it. I don't read a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think he's been on the show 4 or 5 times now, so yeah. I highly recommend him. So either listen to the podcast or his books. But Tribe is a must one. If you have any inkling to read at all, I would recommend put that number 1 on your list, and it's very short.
Writing it down now. Got it, Roger.
What about film, television, documentaries? Any of those that you like?
I like documentaries because they're more like real stuff, right? But there's still stuff in there. Like they're making a documentary of one of our missions right now on Netflix, right? And I had one of the guys call me, and I'm sure there's going to be fluff in there that you're like, well, that didn't happen. But they elongate it to get more time, and it's got to be appealing to other people, right? I like very truthful things, or Westerns, right? Like Lonesome Doves. We watch Lonesome Dove all the time here, right? But again, the running joke in our house is we can't even watch a movie. We can't even all 4 of us would not be able to sit down and watch an entire movie because we would get to talking about something because we debrief a lot about certain things, right? Or talk about life stuff or the cows or the horses, and we just get tied up and just not getting sucked in and watching a TV show. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I need to sit down and relax a little bit more. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's some great television out there. Actually, one that came up over and over again, and it's old, but law enforcement specifically would always, or a lot of them would say, The Wire. And I finally sat down and started watching. It's 4 seasons, I think it is 4 or 5, maybe it's 5. But they said it is the closest thing to their experience in law enforcement, and it was phenomenal. So I think that's the thing. There are just like books, there are some phenomenal shows. That one's on HBO, but well worth.
Never even heard of it.
Yeah, and it was like basically I think 2000 or early 2001 was when the first one came out, and then so the kind of the way they've done it, and it's so well done. I think it was a Baltimore journalist who kind of covered homicide initially. But they told like the first series was through the kind of standing up of this detective, anti-drug gang or unit, whatever you want to call it. And so you see through their eyes. The second one you see through the smuggler's eyes. The third time you see through the gang member's eyes. The fourth is more like the school and how these young kids get to this point. And the fifth, I think, was more like the politician, like how, as we were talking about, 2020, the right way, the wrong way. And it's just so well done because every single perspective is different. And it's, I think each episode is an hour. So you could kind of do that and then walk away and do all the CrossFit and all the other things rather than be sucked into a 2.5 hour film. But why it's not more well known, I don't know, because it's by far one of the best pieces of television I've ever watched.
Never even heard of it. But again, so you recommend it. I put it down, and it might be if we have a little bit, we watch it,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Well, the next
Yeah.
question, is there a person that you recommend to come on this podcast as a guest to speak to the first responders, military, and associated professions of the world?
God, there's a bunch of dudes, right? Um, yeah, there's like uh, my old sergeant. He retired just after me. But God, there's a bunch of people, but I don't, trying to think. I mean, my other buddy, that my other team leader that was with team leader with me on the team, he's still there. I think he's going to retire next year sometime. But one of those two, Brian or Chris. Chris was the old sergeant, and he was in the military. He got out, and he had 82nd Airborne, came back in to the Ranger Battalion, and then came over to become a cop. And he got onto SWAT with us. Came back as a sergeant. So he's got a lot of experience and a lot of. He was my in between from the admin to the sergeant. We communicated quite a bit because he was the sergeant of the team, right? And so, but he was up talking to the admin way more than I was, and so he'd be a good one. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I can give you the information.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. All right. Well, then the last question before we make sure where to find you and also make sure that we talk about your apparel company as well. What do you do to decompress?
I tell this to people all the time. I could go down to a mercantile shop with my kids and my wife. And that's what I do. I could go to the supermarket. And that's what I do. I just like being out with my family. That's all. And so I don't say, no, I put the headphones on, I put my hood on, I get in the gym. I don't do that. You know what I mean? We're social people. I'm a social person. I like my family, and we do things as a family all the time. So that's what I do is I just go places with them and do stuff with them. But there's stuff we have to do. Like later today, we got to do stuff with the horses. You know what I mean? The girls will be out there with the horses with me. And then we're all doing a workout here. So my wife and my daughters are doing a workout here at our place. And so I guess that's what I do decompress is I just hang with my family and do stuff like that. I don't specifically hone in on one thing that I do that's isolating me from anything, just so I decompress, right? I decompress within my own family. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do the same. That and walking my dog. So.
Yeah. See what I'm saying? It's just like that, because you have time to think when you're out there walking around and doing stuff, and you have time to think out when you're lifting weights, but you're not alone. You know what I mean? You're with someone, and you're conversing with somebody or something, So yeah, that's what I do. And that's what I like. And I've always been that way. So.
Well, for people listening, firstly, let's talk about the apparel company.
Mm-hmm. So 3 Arrow Apparel, Instagram at 3 Arrow Apparel. Each arrow is my wife and daughter, and I'm the bar. So it's a team concept. So if the team is tightly bonded together, the individual byproduct of that team is individual strength, the arrows. That individual strength will always contribute to the team, and the team contributes to building that individual strength. So it was a team concept, and we built that, and we have hats, shirts, we have sayings on our shirts. We have 9 trademarks. One of our trademarks is licensed with the American Legion. And so we get dividends from that every year. And it's basically live life through action. Anything you do in life, I don't care if you're a bull rider, if you're a hockey player, you're a soccer player, we're for you because it's actionable, right? And so everything's derivative from a team, a family, a team as far as the family goes. But if you're an individual competing in something individually, it's still for you because we're all about strength, drive, and determination, And so I started it with my coaching thing, the arrows, right? And then my wife was like, you should probably put that on some shirts and sell it. And I'm like, no one's going to buy that. So we do all right. We get orders every week and all over the US and stuff. And so we're about to restock some more stuff when we build our gym out here at our place out in Texas. And so we're all crammed into our room right now because we just moved here 4.5 months ago. So, and we bought a trailer and we do shows and have the tent set up, and everyone there works it because it's everyone in the family is part of it. So the girls, help run the tills and the money, and I do the talking, and my wife does the inventory. I mean, everyone just kind of plays their part for it. And so then we sponsor athletes. We have some athletes that we sponsor with clothing. And so, yeah, it's it just kind of started growing slow, and it just kept building and building and building. But I want these things to stand for something. You know what I mean? So I don't want to become a millionaire overnight and then next year no one ever wear our stuff. So that slow progression of growth is what I'm okay with. And everyone tells me you should grow faster. I'm okay with where we're going now because I want that to mean something. And so, that 3 Arrow apparel, we got hoodies, hats, and shirts. Pretty cool stuff. And then my coaching stuff is at 3 Arrow TME. That's my coaching, but I just do family stuff on there and coaching stuff. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, yeah. I want to thank you so much. It's been such an interesting conversation. We've been all over the place and taking a deep dive into CrossFit, especially training, both of your daughters to be competitive in that space has been really interesting. And then obviously paralleling that with the woeful lack of fitness standards in our professions, plural. Yeah. So I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Absolutely, James. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much. And it was great meeting you for the first time with our Northern brothers. And then now I appreciate it.